And yeah, it starts off really well on Friday, the Bundesliga. I mean, we couldn't have. I personally think this is like the best way to start 2025, Stefan. The Dortmund against Leverkusen fixture. It's tradition that the first half, like the initial game of the season, is by the champion, right? The Friday game, the opening game. Usually the Rückrunde is also with the champion. This is not the start of the Rückrunde. I have to add this, right? This is technically match day 16, so we have still 2 matches. But per tradition, when the Bundesliga restarts after the winter break, it is the champion that kicks it off, and we get a really good fixture here. Dortmund against Leverkusen. This will set the tone, I think, in so many ways for Dortmund, for Leverkusen, but also the Bundesliga overall, right? Because Leverkusen win this game, I think they remain in a really good position to keep challenging Bayern Munich for the Bundesliga title. Dortmund and Milan have to win this game because it's so tight in that race for the Champions League. The gap between challenging for fourth and being somewhere in the middle of the table is so narrow right now. So this is going to be a fantastic fixture to kick off 2025, Stefan.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Leverkusen might feel a little hard done by in the sense that they kicked off the season with a really difficult trip to Borussia Park against Gladbach, which was a great game. And now they have to do something very similar and go to the Westfalenstadion, which has been, a good kind of respite for Dortmund, if you will. So far this season, we've seen them pick up a lot of impressive points and impressive performances at home. Perhaps the most obvious one being that 0-0 draw. Was it 0-0? No, sorry, 1-1, 2-2. I can't even remember what the score was. But the Bayern game, they drew with Bayern. I know that. They both took a point each. I can remember the Gittins goal. I'm trying to remember who else scored it.
It was 1-1.
Yeah, 1-1. I thought that. Yeah, I thought that. And, they have done relatively well there. So it's on paper, it's a difficult task for Leverkusen to overcome. I must admit, though, I'm intrigued to see what happens this game for a number of reasons. But I do kind of want to see how Leverkusen approach the second half of the season, because the first half, obviously, well, at least the start of the first half. So I guess, in other words, the first quarter of the season, if you will. Leverkusen didn't start it well at all. They looked jaded. They looked tired. They looked like they couldn't defend. But they've kind of slowly but surely turned things around. And I actually was kind of thinking over the winter break about how, because this is the kind of stupid stuff I think about even when I'm not working, about, Xabi Alonso in his second season at Leverkusen, and how it's almost like that kind of, like when really popular bands have that amazing debut album and they kind of say that second album curse sort of thing. What it usually means is that the second album's perfectly fine, but it can't match the perfection of the first album. Arctic Monkeys. And, it's I was kind of thinking whether that's kind of what, I mean, I feel bad poking Arctic Monkeys there because there are a million bands who are like that. But they're probably the most obvious one. The second album's not that bad. They got much progressively worse after that, to be honest. But anyway, it's interesting, how for not that long ago, we really thought, wow, are the wheels coming off this Leverkusen team quicker than we thought it would? But then Alonso managed to turn things around, and we're actually now at a point where I think not that they deserve more credit for what they did last season, but I think Alonso deserves a lot of credit if he is able to kind of steer this team back towards a genuine title challenge, because last season everything went right for them. Nothing went wrong. They had the rub of the dice, or whatever the expression is. They had all the best luck in the world, all the best will in the world, and whatever could go right went right for them, whereas their domestic rivals around them were just completely kind of falling apart. Bayern Munich, most obvious example. This season, Bayern have got their act together, Frankfurt have got their act together, and everything that could have went wrong for Leverkusen in the first half of the season did go wrong for them. And yet they're still standing, and they're still kind of within touching distance of Bayern. They're still in the title race. And, I just think it's a good test of Alonso's capacity as a head coach, because, yes, we learned a lot from Leverkusen last season and what they're capable of, but if everything goes right for them, you don't really learn as much from than you would if obviously they had to deal with a number of challenges. That's when we really see the measure of these players, of the squad. And Xabi Alonso as a problem solver, and I think he has done a really interesting job of trying to solve the problems in this Leverkusen team. So anyway, that's a kind of long-winded way of me saying I'm intrigued to see how they approach this game against Borussia Dortmund, because we've seen them go into games like this. For example, the Bayern Munich game in Munich, where they basically just sat deep and decided they were just going to take a point, and they frustrated Bayern Munich to no ends, and were quite happily whistling up the road with a point in their hand. And I don't really think Dortmund are that kind of threat. I don't think they have that kind of ability to impose themselves in a game like Bayern do. But that home form has to be respected. And I think I'd be really interested to see if Leverkusen go into this game thinking point will do, so we're going to set up our game plan to take a point, or if Xabi Alonso thinks, no, the Dortmund team aren't up to much. Okay, they've got decent home form, but we've seen them capitulate time and time again to decent teams this season. And we're a decent team, so we're going to go there for all 3 points. But yeah, I'll be interested to see. So far, as far as I can tell, Boniface is the only player who's genuinely out. Hoffman as well. I think there were some question marks over Granit Xhaka, but for the most part, we'll probably see a full-strength starting 11 from Leverkusen. Unless, of course, you suggest that, Boniface should be starting instead of Schick. But Schick obviously ended 2024 in tremendous form. So it's a strong team. I think they should be going there looking to pick up all 3 points, despite how well Dortmund have played at home this season.
I think the only one who's in doubt is Granit Xhaka, who is dealing with an ankle injury, so it has nothing to do with his hair transplant that he got, Stefan.
Yeah.
Big news over January. It's the most high-profile hair transplant since Jurgen Klopp got it. In 2015? No, I mean, I personally think Leverkusen need to go there to win the game, and because at this stage of the title race, you need the best Bayern Munich, to make up that gap. It's still 4 points. Bayern Munich went to Dortmund and dropped 2 points, so the mission there is to essentially go to Dortmund and best that result, right? At the very least, you got to match it, I think, if you want to stay in the title race. And I mean, it's a tricky one because you only get a point there, and Bayern Munich win against Gladbach, which, the jury's still out on that, and we'll get to Gladbach and Bayern and the original Klassiker in a moment. But, you got to best the Bayern's result in Dortmund. And yeah, I mean, I look at this squad now, and the fitness of almost everyone is there. Even, I suspect Xhaka will be playing, even if he is considered the quote-unquote doubtful. Palacios is in the squad. Kicker's projecting a double, 2 strikers up front, Teller and Schick, which I think is interesting. It's a different tactical lineup that we have seen before. Teller has been really good for Leverkusen in this run before the winter break, so I can see Alonso rewarding him there with playing time. It's I think a lot of it will come down to whether they were able to preserve the form going into the winter break, into this match. Coming out, it was short. It's not like previous winter breaks. Can you go and sort of match the performances that you had going into the winter? And I think that is the absolute key here, because Leverkusen were so very good, right? They look like the team of old. They look like the team that could challenge Bayern all the way. And I think that's a big one here. Big news out of Dortmund today. I think that's surprised quite a lot of people that Sebastian Kehl renewed his contract, right? Despite the fact that he wasn't given the promotion that he sought after. I think that's fascinating because it maybe shows that there is more unity in that front office than we think. If Sebastian Kehl opts to stay around, right, with Lars Ricken still there and Michael Zorc coming back and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think there's a lot of storylines going on here, and I personally think Leverkusen have to win this match just to keep the title race interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could argue that since Bayern took a point there, Leverkusen should be at least taking a point if you kind of want to even things out. it's interesting to kind of take this from the kind of Dortmund perspective as well, because they ended the first half of the season, even though technically isn't, in decent form. You know, they went 5 games unbeaten, beat Freiburg, drew with Bayern, drew with Gladbach, drew with Hoffenheim, and then beat Wolfsburg, which was their first away win of the season. The first league away win, which, you know, was a monkey to get off their back. And, you know, they also go into this game with a relatively clean bill of health, as far as I can tell. The only players missing are Pascal Gross and Niklas Sula, who neither of which I would say would be starting this game. You know, obviously Gross is a great player, Sula's a decent player to have, but, you know, we're talking about a backline of Rierson, Anton, Schlotterbeck and Bensebaini, which is probably Nuri Sahin's strongest backline. Sabitzer, Nemcha and Julian Brand in the middle, Bayer, Girassi, probably Gittins in the attack. That's exactly probably what Nuri Sahin wants to start his team as going into this game. You know, we've seen, so not only are they in relatively decent form, I guess those points dropped in those draws isn't fantastic, but we are seeing kind of key players kind of stepping up prior to the winter break. You know, Nemcha, I thought, had a really impressive end to 2024 for Dortmund. It looked like they were finally kind of they'd found a role for him in that kind of number 6 role. Nuri Sahin, that is. Bensebaini was playing well, Rierson's playing well, obviously Jamie Gittins going from strength to strength as well. So there's not really any excuses for Nuri Sahin going into this game either. He's not got an injury ravaged team. His team aren't out of form. There aren't players leaving the club. Well, I mean, there are. I guess Daniel Malm's expected to leave in the coming days, but, you know, that's a move that has been sanctioned by Dortmund because he's been wanting to leave for a couple of years now, and he's just not maybe a starting player in that Dortmund team. So I guess in a way you could actually say this is a kind of must-win for Dortmund as well, I think, because they've got really no excuse not to go into this game and give it their all. And it'd be interesting to see how Nuri Sahin does that. He obviously did a really good job of tactically setting up against Bayern Munich. He frustrated Bayern. He managed to get the best out of key players, stepped up in the right moments. And obviously picked up a point for them. Yeah, you could probably argue they were quite lucky to kind of hold on in the second half, but you could say the same about Leverkusen when they travelled to Allianz Arena prior to that. So, you know, this is exactly the kind of game where Dortmund fans would be saying, right, we've got a full-strength team, we've got our strongest starting 11, it's up to Nuri Sahin to show what he's capable of here. And if they can pick up a win against Bayer Leverkusen, it's a great start to 2025 for them.
Dortmund haven't lost the first game of a calendar year in 20 years. The last time they lost the first game of a calendar year was in 2004 when they lost to Schalke, a late Ebbesund winner. I mean, that's a blast from the past. I have another cool stat for you. If Xabi Alonso wins this, he becomes the fastest Bundesliga coach to reach 50 wins. He had 75 games. This is the 75th game. If he wins this, took him just 50 games to reach 75 games to reach 50 wins. Pep Guardiola is the fastest so far. He took 61. So my guess is that Javi's going to get this. But yeah, it's going to be such an important game for both sides, right? Both teams have to absolutely win this game. It's going to be fireworks, fascinating fixture to kick off 2025, I think. So, yeah, curious also what people think in the comments. Let us know what you think. How is this going to end? What is the outcome going to be of this match?